Our reading this morning is from the book of Genesis, chapter 16. Now, Sarah, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my maidservant. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abraham agreed to what Sarah said. So after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarah said to Abraham, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my servant in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Your servant is in your hands," Abraham said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarah mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, servant of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will so increase your descendants that they will be too numerous to count." The angel of the Lord also said to her, "You are now with child, and you will have a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers." She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." That is why the well was called Beer Lahai Roi. It is still there, between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abraham a son, and Abraham gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to introduce Rosemary to you. First, to say that I first met Rosemary a couple of years ago when Meryl got in touch with the Leprosy mission for a speaker to come and talk to us at one of our Mothers' Union afternoon. And Rosemary came. All I know about you, Rosemary, personally, is that you live in Brentwood and you're a volunteer for the Leprosy mission. So what else would you like to say about yourself?
Okay, so I first became a volunteer about 10, 11 years ago, having gone on a volunteer sponsored walk down at Leigh-on-Sea to meet the regional manager. And then subsequently, he sent the volunteer speakers from Eastern England and Southern England an email saying, "Would you like to go on the first volunteer speakers trip to Nepal in November 2014?
I expect that was quite some journey for you. One thing we always ask a visiting speaker on these mission-focused Sundays is, what would you say is the most important thing that the church needs to do or can do in 2024?
I think to pray for the marginalised in society, wherever they are, the forgotten people who are isolated and vulnerable.
I'd certainly agree with that, and I'm sure everyone here would. So thank you, Rosemary. So now we're going to hear Rosemary's talk now. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to speak to you this morning on behalf of the Leprosy Mission. And thank you very much indeed for the gift from the church to support this mission and some of the most vulnerable in society. In the next 10 minutes, 5 people worldwide will be diagnosed with leprosy, a forgotten and hidden disease which largely affects some of the most vulnerable people in society. And we've just heard this morning about the story of Hagar, and she was one of the most vulnerable people in society, wasn't she? She was a woman at a time when women had absolutely no voice in society. Hagar, as we have heard from Genesis chapter 16, was unseen and unheard. Hagar is a slave girl, and we see here that slaves are the lowest of the low. Hagar is an Egyptian living in a foreign land, so her native culture will be quite different. Hagar, a vulnerable female slave in a foreign land, takes flight and flees into the desert, a wilderness place. And we see here as well that Hagar's story takes prominence over that of Abraham and Sarai, whom one would have thought were the most important people at that time. Their focus has been in Genesis chapters 12, 13, 14 and 15, all about Abraham and God's promises to him and Abraham and Sarai. And now, in this chapter, the focus is on Hagar and her encounter with God. And when she flees to the wilderness, I wonder if you know that wilderness, in the Bible context, doesn't refer so much to a landscape as we think of it, but rather to a place of desolation and danger, a lonely place, a place that is inhospitable to human life. And yet here we see Hagar, the very first person in Bible history, encounters the angel of the Lord, a human manifestation of God. And the angel of the Lord appears 9 times in the entire Old Testament, and in this case, the first case, appears to the most vulnerable member of society. So it's in this place of desolation and abandonment where Hagar encounters that she is not invisible to God, and neither are her circumstances. And we today are not invisible to God, and neither are our circumstances. She experiences the compassion of God at a time of great misery and distress. Hagar enters into a relationship with God that reshapes her identity and her perspective. And this relationship is one that she has to receive. And it's the same for us as Christians today. We have a relationship with God that God gives to us in Christ Jesus. And there's nothing that we can do to achieve it and to earn it. And Hagar names God the God who sees. Hagar probably had many names for God, which didn't conjure up any hope at all up until that point. But here, this name gives her hope. So Hagar found that in the wilderness, a place that was there because of the choices of others, God did not shut her down, but God released her. Now she's speaking so much about her encounter that the well comes to be called Ber Laha Roy, spring of the living one who sees me. Acting in faith, Hagar safely returns to Abram and Sarai's household, and she knows that she's no longer a slave but an heir. And we sing the song, don't we? I'm no longer a slave to fear, I am a child of God. Hagar, and like us, an heir to God's promises. God speaks to Hagar by name, and this gives her hope too, that she is seen and found. God gave Hagar courage, and she discovered what it was to be strongly supported by God. And in the life of Hagar, we see so many parallels with the work of the leprosy mission. The leprosy mission aims to show those with leprosy that they are seen and heard and not abandoned. The charity aims to see leprosy eradicated. It's a global Christian organisation leading the fight against leprosy. Following Jesus Christ, the leprosy mission seeks to bring about transformation, breaking the chains of leprosy and empowering people to attain healing, dignity, and life in all its fullness. So how is leprosy caught? Leprosy is an airborne disease, and most of us have an immune system which won't catch it. It's typically caught by those of the world's poorest population who don't necessarily have access to good sanitation facilities and have a poor diet and don't have clean water. The current focus for this season for the leprosy mission is to see the rebuilding of the outpatients department at Muzaffarpur Leprosy Hospital in northeast India, and this is where we're going to visit this morning. It's located in the poorest of India's many states. The outpatients department is in urgent need of rebuilding. There is very little shelter and seating. Every day, about 600 people come to seek help, where it's their only hope to see a doctor. One such person is Rajisha. Rajisha is about 18 years old, and she caught leprosy. She was diagnosed by a local doctor in the village, which the doctor visited. He noticed white spots on her dark skin, typical sign of leprosy. Leprosy affects the area of the body which gets cold, so our faces, our nose, eyes, and also our hands and our feet. And it attacks the nerve endings in the body. And once they are numb through the disease, then it can't be restored. However, there is a multi-drug therapy which can be taken straight away, and one has to take it for 6 months. And within a week or two, the disease stops spreading and is cured. But one must finish the course. So Rajisha was referred to Muzaffarpur Leprosy Hospital. She had to make the long journey alone because her mother was not well enough to travel with her, and her father, likely to be a subsistence labourer, couldn't afford to take any time off work and not work. There, in the outpatients department at Muzaffarpur Leprosy Hospital, a doctor attended to her wounds and had her admitted to a ward. So here we see, like Hagar, one of the most vulnerable people in society, that she was seen and heard and cared for. She has now had reconstructive surgery on her dominant right hand. Later on, she will have surgery on her left hand, and Rajisha hopes to be a nurse in the future. She enjoys attending the chapel services, which she says gives her hope. She has written out in her non-dominant hand some Bible verses, John chapter 3, verses 16, 17 and 18. So Muzaffarpur Leprosy Hospital is a beacon of light and hope, yet it is dilapidated, and its state threatens the existence of the hospital. Patients have to queue for long hours, either in severe heat or in the monsoon rains. There are very few washing facilities, there is very little privacy, and there's very few seats. This photo shows the pharmacy. And there's no other place in the region for people to come and to have free treatment and prayer and care. So I'd like to thank you very much for your gift towards the Leprosy Mission's work this morning. And as you can see, it is changing lives. We're going to watch a short video, and then I will conclude the talk. And happy to have questions. Thank you.
This is Muzaffarpur, a city in northern Bihar, India's poorest state. It's a forgotten place where many people live in extreme poverty. It's no surprise that leprosy rates here are 3 times higher than anywhere in India. People affected by leprosy live in the shadows of society. They are hidden, unseen, and unwanted by those around them. Ignored and excluded, these are the very people Jesus showed love to and served on earth. My name is Dr. Pham. I'm privileged to lead healthcare across leprosy mission hospitals in India. I've come to Muzaffarpur to meet people affected by leprosy. People like Aisha, a widow who has lived with rejection and loneliness all her life.
I first noticed symptoms when I was doing housework. Washing pots and pans was difficult because my fingers wouldn't work properly. Then cuts on my feet ulcerated and I couldn't stand. Every time I tried to walk, I fell over.
Aisha has no one to look after her. When she needs treatment, she comes here to the Leprosy Mission Hospital in Muzaffarpur, where she knows she'll find friendship and acceptance. It is a long journey for her, and it's always very busy with long queues of people waiting to see a doctor. I'm at the Leprosy Mission Hospital, Muzaffarpur. A hot summer morning, 43 degrees centigrade. The patients are already queuing. Children, women, sick, or in the crowd. And I feel for them. Inside the hospital, I find 18-year-old Rajisha, a leprosy patient who traveled over 100 kilometers to get the treatment she so desperately needed.
Strange marks appear on my face and my fingers begin to feel stiff and bend inwards. Then an ulcer on my finger wouldn't heal. My mom took me to a visiting doctor in the village. I'll never forget when he said I had leprosy. I thought that was the end of everything. The same doctor said I should come to this hospital. When I explained I'm from a poor family, he told me not to worry. Leprosy treatment is free here, he said. I've had reconstructive surgery to straighten the fingers on my right hand. I still need surgery for my left hand too, but I'm learning to write with it while I'm waiting. One day soon, I hope, I can study for my exams.
Rajisha says she's very grateful for the specialist treatment she's getting here. But these patients deserve more than having to wait for hours in the hot sun, especially if they have ulcers or cannot stand. So many are old and disabled, and there's no privacy in the cramped consulting rooms. It's upsetting. We can't give these dear people more dignity. No one is ever turned away from Muzaffarpur. A dedicated medical team works tirelessly from the dilapidated outpatients department, including the hospital superintendent, Dr. Pankaj. I meet him on one of the busy wards as he is making his morning rounds. He tells me they are struggling to cope with rising demand. When this hospital was built 40 years ago, they treated a fraction of the patients they do today. Increasing cases of leprosy and decades of wear and tear have left the facilities badly run down. And with budget stretched, the hospital is collapsing under the strain. But there is a solution. God has laid a vision on the team's heart to build a new state-of-the-art outpatient department. This will transform patients' experience with a bigger, better, climate-controlled space where they will receive the vital care they need, the vital care they deserve. Without it, we don't know how much longer this place will be able to provide leprosy services. And there is nowhere else for people to get the treatment and the loving care they so desperately need. Will you stand with the team at Muzaffarpur Hospital today as they serve the least, the last and the lost? Please, will you help to build a new outpatient department so that they can follow their calling to be Jesus' hands and feet to people with leprosy? I hope you have seen the good work this hospital is doing. Every year the number of patients are increasing, it's getting crowded, and we would like to improve the facilities. Would you kindly support us in building a new outpatient department here? And I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your gift of £36 will buy 1 ton of bricks. Your gift of £188 will buy 2 tons of cement. Your gift of £442 will pay for the reconstructive surgery to restore mobility. Your gift of £2,008 will pay for 1 labourer to rebuild the outpatients department. And your gift of £9,275 will build and equip a whole consultation room. Thank you.
That was really insightful. Not only so the insights from Scripture shared, really enjoyed that, but the work that you actually did. I said at the beginning, the only thing I knew about the leprosy mission was Eddie Askew's books and prayers and watercolor paintings and Christmas cards that sort of we've bought over the time, but I didn't realize the extent to which you do. That's really fascinating. So what we'd like is maybe other people have questions. Does anybody have sort of questions that they'd like to ask or find out some more information at all?
Whereabouts other than India does leprosy occur?
Oh, leprosy occurs in a number of other countries. Think really of the world's poorest countries, Sudan, Nepal, Mozambique, and other countries like that. Over half of all leprosy cases are in India, though.
What you're doing is absolutely amazing. Are you doing anything to try and improve sanitation and good water? Because that prevention is as much as part of it as cure.
Yes, I think that the Leprosy Mission works with other charities too. So every charity that is working towards getting clean water to those that don't have it are helping to eradicate leprosy. And Leprosy Mission itself often raises funds to get clean water to villages and communities, remote places that don't have clean water. Yes, they do. And they also help with diet as well, when possible, to improve that.
Rosemary, you said about raising funds to replace the hospital. In terms of the medication, I think in the video it said it's a 6-month regime of treatment. How is that funded? Is that through the Leprosy Mission as well?
It's funded by a major pharmaceutical company, so the medication is actually free. However, the administration costs are borne by the Leprosy Mission, And the 6 monthly medication, one collects it every month from a local clinic because they want to check that there are no complications when you take the medication. It's quite a high dose of medication, and there can be complications.
I think when you came before, Rosemary, you spoke about leprosy. When it was here, there was areas in the UK where... Could you say a bit about that? Because I found that interesting.
Yes. I mean, leprosy used to be in the UK, in England, in Europe, and there's a very good book, although it's a fiction book, The Island by Victoria Hislop, that many of you may have read, because that gives a very graphic account of how leprosy was in mainland Greece up until, I don't know, late 40s, 50s. And the thing is that the infrastructure in Europe is so different to that in some of these very remote places. And we've been able to eradicate leprosy, more or less, in Europe and in the UK, because we have mostly got access to good sanitation facilities, a good diet, and clean water. And hence our immune system is much, much stronger than it used to be. And leprosy hospitals are typically built outside of the town. So when we stayed at an Andaban hospital in Nepal, it's built some miles outside the city because they don't want the stigma of having a leprosy hospital nearby, typically outside the town. And we often see that when there's been leprosy places in the UK, they've been out in the countryside.
My question is just a little bit touch on what she just asked. Is there any plan or program or activities or awareness or maybe in touch, apart from international donations from the Leprosy mission, to have a more proper contact with the authorities there? Because it's like they build the hospital, they abandon it, and it looks like the people are completely abandoned. Is there any plan or to have some kind of a touch or that kind of discussions or awareness to the government to do more apart from international donations?
Yeah, wherever possible, the Leprosy Mission will work with governments, and they certainly work with other international agencies very closely. Wherever possible, they will, yes.
That is really, really helpful, and we thank you for coming and sharing with us this morning about that. Thank you very much.
Well, a huge thank you to the church for inviting me to speak this morning. Your gifts making a huge difference to some of the most poorest people in society. Thank you so much.